Like most people, you've probably got a lot going on. So if you can't make it to a Charles Bookwalter for Congress town hall, we'll bring the town hall to you. Join Charles Bookwalter Thursday nights at 7 p.m. for a digital town hall, streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Jump into the comments section to join in the conversation. Make a comment or ask Charles for his opinions on the issues that are most important to you. That's the Charles Bookwalter for Congress digital town hall, streaming live beginning at 7 p.m. Thursday nights, exclusively on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Search Bookwalter for Congress to learn more.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land, we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, to our potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret experience just got even better.
Did you want to join me in our Green Beret Experience fundraiser, but just couldn't swing it? Times are tough. I get it. Well, I got some great news for you. A generous group of Bookwalter for Congress supporters are offering matching funds so you can attend the Special Forces experience. You pay half, the other half is matched. And you pay in full, you can bring a buddy.
Until matching funds are exhausted, you can now save big on attending the Green Beret and Special Operators Experience. While spaces last, donate $100, get upgraded to the $200 package. Donate $200 or more, bring a buddy for free.
This is your opportunity to rub shoulders with some of America's most highly trained and lethal warriors while supporting my America First campaign.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret and Special Operators Experience and Fundraiser, March 22nd and 23rd, Fowler, Indiana. Visit bookwalterforcongress.com to order your tickets before these matching funds are gone.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Kramer, and with me tonight, as always, is Charles Bookwalter. He is the host of tonight's Town Hall. I'm just here to make the digital stuff happen. I'm not the host. You're the host. You got the big window. You're the host. Tonight, let's talk about what we got going on. We've had over the last few weeks a lot of stuff going on. Tomorrow night and Saturday, we having a big event. Charles, go ahead and tell everybody about that.
Force, the Navy SEALs, including SEAL Team 6, and a couple guys from the most elite unit in the Army, in the military, actually, Delta Force. We will have demos with these guys that are going to do shoot, move, and communicate, demonstrating the skills that we've learned uh, in the military, in these Special Operations Forces units. There's going to be an hour-long, what I call TCCC, Tactical Combat and Casualty Care course. That is going to be a classroom course and then some hands-on work. There's going to be a simulator pistol shooting that you can do again and again and again, learning how to shoot on a digital simulator. It's super fun. And then a live pistol course. Those have all been filled up. Our pistol training, shoot with an operator. Small side events like how to clear a malfunction weapon, how to set up your body armor. Lunch is going to be provided, and it's just going to be an all-around fun opportunity. We have had, it's not a gimmick, we have had multiple people contribute to the campaign and say, I want to give this much money, a lot of money, $1,000, $500, all over the board. And they said $2,000 we got from somebody, and they weren't able to make it to the event. And so I just asked them if we could apply it to someone else that would want to go and match their funds. But we've filled up all the shooting opportunities. Although I will say, we've had a few people reach out to us. If we got enough people the day of the event, it's possible we could have a whole other iteration. But right now, that's full. And so we're just encouraging as many people from the 4th Congressional District to come out to Fowler, Indiana, and just come out and observe. It's a nominal fee, minimal fee of $50 to come spend the day out there. We ask you, let us know. You can pay while you're there. You can pay there. Contact the campaign, email us, let us know you're coming so we can give you some lunch. And it's a full day of and what we're about to talk about today.
Right.
There's no better time.
Yep.
To consider getting a little bit of preparation. Man, I remember I've been prepping for 10 years. And I remember when I would actually say that. Here I am saying it in front of a national audience that I've been prepping. Because now people are like, oh, wow, I should probably maybe consider having some food in my basement, or having a homestead, or knowing how to work a firearm. Or pulling my kids out of public school.
Right.
So there's never been a better time to surround yourself with like-minded people in close proximity to you that know how to use a weapon and train. And here's one of the reasons why. There have been many times that people have tried to set up these little cell networks, and I've looked into them, or people join the militia. But I've said it on this program before. You join a militia, you're probably the only person there that's not a Fed.
Right.
So you can't join a militia.
Right.
The rest of them are FBI agents. So this is a political movement, and it's happening across the United States, and it's happening in Indiana in a major way. And I know there's a lot of people out there. I talk to them. They're like, you know what, Charlie, come get me when
Right.
when the SHTF come get me when it hits the fan. I'm done with it. And I'm saying, no, this is what's happening. This is it. We have a political opportunity. The time is now. The wave is happening. You've got to join this political movement, because when you do, this is the cell.
Right.
This is the cell structure.
The people that you can trust on and rely on in the event that something turns sideways. You've got a group of people that are in, for lack of a better term, in bed or in the same mentality as you. Their
right.
ideologies and what the values they share are similar. So you won't have the issues that you might have if you're trying to find that person in an emergency. That's the last point you want to be looking for a friend or an ally is during an emergency, because everybody,
right.
I mean, think about this, Charles, when COVID first hit and people were walking down the aisles of the stores with their masks on, do you remember how everybody kind of eyed everybody else as a potential person that could kill them?
Well, yeah, because I didn't have a mask on. They were staring at me like I was going to kill them. That was me.
Right. You're the troublemaker. You're patient A, patient zero.
I was one where the manager came and said, you got to, sir, you and your family have to leave. Like, I was the one.
Yep.
So, yes, I do know what you're talking about. I felt those evil, scornful stares, which many of you people did. But the reason I'm asking people to join this political movement is because right now, you can tell, we could smoke out the feds in this movement. You know who's legitimate and who not, and who isn't. In Indiana, I have got the support. I have been endorsed by the Tea Party Coalition of Indiana, which are all the groups, the Tea Party groups in the state of Indiana, to get together and form this coalition. These people, and I want to give a shout out to these people that have been doing it: Michael Morris, Isabel Ho, Rick Burr, so many. I'm trying to think of all the ones. Adam Harvey. So many people in Indiana that have Rick Barr. I'm sorry, I said Rick Barr. There's so many people that have been doing this for 2-3 decades that still have Tea Party meetings, that still are trying to recruit people to get engaged, that have never let up and never stopped. They've been waiting for a moment like this. We owe those people a debt of gratitude. We owe them a lot of things for keeping this whole thing together while the rest of us were coming around to get involved. So reach out to those people. And there's a vetting process as you get involved in this political, and you will get smoked out if you're a Fed. I don't care how sophisticated you are or were in the intel world. You've got a bunch of Green Berets and special operations guys and military people that are getting involved in politics now, and we will smoke you out. No doubt.
Speaking of which, let's get into the show right after this.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret experience just got even better.
Did you want to join me in our Green Beret experience fundraiser, but just couldn't swing it? Times are tough. I get it. Well, I got some great news for you. A generous group of Bookwalter for Congress supporters are offering matching funds so you can attend the Special Forces experience. You pay half, the other half is matched. And you pay in full, you can bring a buddy.
Until matching funds are exhausted, you can now save big on attending the Green Beret and Special Operators experience. While spaces last, donate $100, get upgraded to the $200 package. Donate $200 or more, bring a buddy for free.
This is your opportunity to rub shoulders with some of America's most highly trained and lethal warriors while supporting my America First campaign.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret and Special Operators Experience and Fundraiser, March 22nd and 23rd, Fowler, Indiana. Visit bookwalterforcongress.com to order your tickets before these matching funds are gone. Hoosiers have been clear. They do not support Joe Biden's Green New Deal. So why does Jim Baird? Why is Jim Baird fighting so hard to bring Joe Biden's Green New Deal to Indiana? Learn more at firejimbaird.com. If Jim Baird is really so against Joe Biden's Green New Deal, why is he supporting so many of its big spending programs? Why does Jim Baird support Joe Biden's Green New Deal? Learn more at firejimbaird.com. On May 7th, vote Charles Bookwalter for Congress.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight's episode has a theme, and we want you to understand before we go into it that
as much as we're going to tell you tonight and inform you tonight that this is not a negative Nancy episode, we are tonight going to go through a number of issues that are on the national stage that you need to be aware of that you may not be. And we're calling it the doom and gloom show, but there is hope at the end, and it involves you. Charles, civic leaders, politicians, and everyday citizens, we know crime is on the rise. The border crisis has not been fixed. In fact, today in El Paso, illegals were being forced back into Mexico, and they got past the military that was there, the National Guard troops that were there, and caused quite a havoc in El Paso. We know that our educational system has lost control. We can see it on a daily basis, not just in the scores that we're seeing, but the fact that they have to lower the standards for these kids because they just can't keep up. And it's not the kids, right? It's the system. Let's start there. This is Nick Freitas. Nick Freitas is a representative out of the Virginia House of Delegates, and he has a message for those of us that are have kids in school. I don't have any kids in school. I know that you don't because you homeschool, but this is what he had to say about the situation that we're currently in. Let's listen.
When you have the government controlling your education, it ends up teaching your kids that the government is pretty much responsible for everything. It's not that they've gotten rid of the American dream, they are redefining it in ways that completely contradict what the original one was. The original one is, you're permitted to live your life the way you want, provided you don't infringe on the rights of others to do the same. We believe in property rights, we believe in individual liberty, we believe in individual responsibility, because liberty without personal responsibility is nothing more than licentiousness. And that's what they're being taught now. And so I will tell you right now, education reform is absolutely critical. But if you're looking for one thing that you can do, and this always makes people mad, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care. If you're looking for one thing that you can do right now, you don't got to ask permission, you don't got to vote for it, you don't got to do anything else. Pull your kids out of environments where they're teaching them to hate their country.
Charles, your thoughts?
You might have to interrupt me, but the doom and gloom scenario is hard for me because I'm an optimistic guy.
Me as well.
And I'm white-pilled, but we do have some problems. When I went down and spoke in Kentucky at this event with General Flynn, he talked a lot about the socialist regimes over the course of history of the world. And he talked about the one thing that they take over first. And admittedly, the first thing he asked the crowd, what is it? What do they take first? And I know a lot of you are going to go where my mind went as well. And I thought the guns, it's what they take away first is the guns. And that's not true. And he said education. The education system is the first thing they take over to indoctrinate your children. And this is why when people talk about me having a legislative agenda, this is why it's on all my campaign material. It's what I talk about everywhere I go, and why I want to join the forces that are working so hard in Washington, D.C. to fight this right now is defunding, disbanding, and completely getting rid of the Department of Education. And when I say that, people freak out a little bit. What do we do without the Department of Education? Well, first of all, think back 43 years, because it's only 43 years old. And what we would do was the same thing we would do back then. You keep more of your money. You do not send it to Washington, D.C. first, where they've built this billion-dollar bureaucracy. They develop a curriculum that they force on everyone, and then they send it back to the states with strings attached that they have to incorporate in conservative states. So this is a top issue. It is one of the most important issues that all Americans should be concerned with. And I think I agree with Freitas that if you want to take your schools back, if you want to take your country back, you remove your children from public schools for 1 year, and they will come begging to you on your knees to bring your children back if you defund them by removing your children from those places. It reminds me, do you want to say something here?
No, go ahead.
Okay, it reminds me of some conversations I've had with local representatives. And I've been looking this up, some of this. First of all, we homeschool for all the positive reasons. Children matriculate into college at higher levels that are homeschooled. In fact, colleges are looking for homeschool kids. Homeschool children test 15 to 25% higher on standardized tests than public school children did. Homeschool children. Here's another one. Here's an important one. Homeschool children are more involved in their communities by going, as they get older, by going to public meetings and being involved in their communities than public school children. Homeschool children are in at least 5 extracurricular activities because they have the time versus public school children. Homeschool children do better than public school children, and all the data shows that. Okay, but they don't want you to know that. And so in 2020, our kids have never gone to public school. They've always been homeschooled. It didn't take COVID, but since 2019, homeschooling has increased over 51%.
That's huge.
Yep. They thought that kids would go back after COVID. They have not returned to public schooling because people see the value in it. You know, last week when I said the reason they don't want to shut down the government is because Americans will realize that we don't need those federal agencies. It's the same thing with
a good example is Twitter. When Elon Musk took it over, he fired 80% of the staff. There was a bumpy ride there for a few weeks, but they got over that. And then now it's running smoother than ever. And he's lost all that weight that he had in his company. We can do the same thing at the governmental level.
Mm-hmm. And so I was really kind of doing a deep dive today on just reading all about homeschooling because it's so important to me. I knew we'd be talking a little bit about tonight. I don't want to bore people with it. I know most people send their kids to public school, and I'm not here in my world. You can still do that. In my world, in the way that I would represent the people of the 4th District, is I'm not saying remove the money from public schools in Indiana, but homeschoolers, there should be other options, either choice and not vouchers, because vouchers come with the strings attached. You have to take tests, you have to prove things to the government. It has to be no strings attached the way it is for homeschooling. So it's got to be the money follows the student with no strings attached. Otherwise, I'm not for it. And I want to be able to opt out of the system and keep my money and apply it to our kids. Right now, I'm being double taxed for it. But if you want to keep your child in a government school, that's fine. You can do that. You can have that options. The difference is what they want is they want everybody in their school. No one could not be in their school. That's dangerous. That should be a red flag to everybody.
Well, and one of the things to look at, and let's look at some of the consequences of this monopoly that public schools have. The following are some videos of what we have now in our society, because we've gotten to the point where the kids are wilding on a regular basis. We'll just let this loop here, Charles, as you continue to talk. It's this effect that it's had. The bad policy has had on our kids where they think that this kind of activity is acceptable. Your daughters don't have to worry about this. Your daughters don't have to worry about getting bullied or beat up like this at school. These are all school events within the last week. This is not months worth of content. This is within the last week. Charles?
Well, I mean, when I first started homeschooling, I remember someone at Intuitive where I worked, they homeschooled. They're like, oh, Charlie, don't do it if you're just trying to protect your children. You know, it's got to be another reason. Well, this is back in 2016 or something like that. And now I look at it, I'm like, are you crazy? Of course I'm homeschooling to protect my children.
Right.
So as we watch this thing, and I'm just going to read off the reasons for homeschooling. I researched this across the board. 80%. A concern about school environment, such as safety, drugs, or negative peer pressure. 80%, that's why people do it. 74.7%, a desire to provide moral instruction. And 58% is a desire to provide religious instruction. So 74, you might as well say it's the same thing.
Yep.
You just don't want to say religion, but that's one of the main reasons we're providing a home education is to teach apologetics. 74%, a emphasis on what is this? Numbers? How can that be the percentages? But emphasis on family life together. A desire to provide a non-traditional approach to child education. So there are a number of reasons, but the top reason is what you're watching right now.
Yep.
It's violent, and most American males, if you're an American male out there listening right now, I know you know this because it's my story, Kramer's story. It's so many. Where's the first time you experienced violence in your life?
School.
Yeah.
I didn't get picked on at home. I didn't get bullied at home.
And where
And where exactly, and what exactly is one of the number one reason, you don't hear this, but the number one reason that people that have no idea about homeschooling say that you shouldn't homeschool? Do you know what it is, Kramer? There's one word they say.
I have no idea.
Socialization.
Oh, yeah.
Socialization. How are you gonna socialize your children? I'm thinking, what you mean? So they can get bullied at school and beat up, like the same reason everyone's pulling their kids out. And again, like I said, homeschool children do at least 5 extracurricular activities. My family is gone all the time doing things with different myriad groups and events. And one of them, by the way, Wednesday night that their dad gets to take part in because I'm an instructor is jujitsu.
Yep.
You know, so
well,
it's
Charles, I come over to your house. We do a lot of work, and I'm driving over to your house to get stuff done during the day. And more likely than not, your wife and the girls are not there. They're out and about. They've gotten their homework done. They've gotten their schoolwork done. And the other day I was over there, I think at 10:30, 11 o'clock? Gone. They're done.
Yeah, they're most of the time they're not here. I mean, it's a joy when they are here and I'm here so I can, hang out with them for a little bit and spend some time with them. But yeah, and look, we owe, those of us that know, owe a debt of gratitude. Once again, it's kind of like going a debt of gratitude to all those Tea Partiers and the people that have been doing this for a few decades. Those of us that know that we owe a debt of gratitude for those homeschooling mothers that started doing this in the 70s and 80s in Indiana. I've met them all over the district right now, and I've heard their stories. I can't tell you, I'm so grateful that we're on, on their shoulders, that they established this. They saw the future, and they started this movement that has led to this massive Indiana is a great state to homeschool your children in, built on the backs of those parents that had a spine, mostly mothers that had a spine to pull their kids out of public schools and teach them at home. It's really incredible. I do want to make one final point. I could talk about this a lot, but I know we're not going to spend all night, and not everyone homeschools their children. Right. But I want to bring in politics into a little bit. And again, we'll probably circle back to this a few times because it's just such a good topic. But in 2020, this Harvard professor, Bridget something, wrote an article saying that we should outlaw school. And I don't know if anyone remembers that, but I read it because, when 2020 we were homeschooling our children. And when the Harvard grads and politicians call for that, it's pretty eye-opening for me. But and so I was looking up some of these opponents of homeschooling, and one person said the personal cost of homeschooling are more than just tuition. They're restructuring the way your family works. Okay. And I thought, what? No, schools took over the original way the family works, first of all. And this is the beauty of homeschooling. If anyone knows, I've said this a lot. One of the great things that for us during COVID is that it didn't disrupt our lives. Our children were already being homeschooled. So we already had a pattern. They were already at home. It didn't disrupt their school life or anything like that. So in a way, that was a blessing during COVID that we homesteaded and that we homeschooled. Also these policymakers that don't know the facts, the great facts about homeschooling. I spoke with one the other night at an event that I went to. This is a legislator in Indiana and a Democrat. And I spoke a little bit, and she came up afterwards to talk to me and ask me some questions. And I gave her a little bit of my background about homeschooling and all that. And this legislator was a 25-year teacher. And she said, "Oh, well, how do you know your children are going to pass these standardized testing to get in school? Doesn't that concern you?" And I regurgitated some facts to her. I'm like, "Well, ma'am, actually, children matriculate into college at higher levels, and they pass college at higher levels, so they get in more." And I said to her, and I wanted her to hear this loud and clear, because she's a legislator that thinks that she knows, and a teacher that thinks that she knows better than everyone else. And as I said, don't worry, ma'am. All the people that we know that are homeschooling, they care more about our kids getting into college than you do. Yep. Okay. We care more about their education, about their school, about their socialization, about their matriculating into college more than you.
But
So
what
don't
they would do, Charles, is they would go on the warpath and say that as educators, they know more. They would take the authoritarian position. I know more than you do. You can't possibly make the right decisions because I'm the educated person here about education on the subject of education. You know, one of the things that is interesting is when you look back, it's easy to tell how we got here. What I like to do is I like to use evidence of today, the mentality of today, to prove exactly what we're saying as conservatives. Not just Republicans, but conservatives. Not all Republicans are conservative.
Yeah.
Right? So, but all conservatives are Republican or libertarians. Yeah. Right? And when you ask how we got here, it's because of program after program after program after program of the government getting deeper and deeper and deeper into your life on a daily basis. And Jamal Bowman, you know, the guy that the clown that pulled the fire alarm there in Congress. This is what
he get charged for that?
He did not get charged for that. No.
Oh, no.
Oddly enough. Oddly enough, it seems like it's everybody's it's got a D behind their name gets special treatment. They have special rights. But this is what
J6ers pull a fire alarm.
No, oddly they didn't.
Is pulling a fire alarm a crime?
It is a crime. It is a crime. Yeah, he had to pay some kind of penance, but it was all done with and swept underneath the rug.
When you're elected official, there's rules for you, and then there's rules for others.
That's right. And this is one of the issues. What he's pushing right now is Joe Biden's Green New Deal. It was supposed to be about energy, right? Saving energy, infrastructure, rebuilding the country. And now what they want to do is they want to put the Green New Deal into owning homes and rent payments and all that kind of stuff. Listen to this. Well, let's do that. Let's do this again.
It is plantation capitalism to have someone paying 40, 50, 60% of their salary towards rent.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there because I don't know what plantation capitalism is, but I can guarantee you the slaves on the plantation didn't pay for anything.
That's true. And in fact, some people argue that that's the number one reason why slavery was a terrible, there's not number one. The number one reason is civil rights. But the number one an economic reason it was a terrible thing is because it was not a good economic plan. I mean, you had to provide everything for a human being. That's very expensive to
Very expensive to undertake.
Terrible strategy. Yeah. Yep. And by the way, those are just inflammatory words. Like clearly choosing words.
It's hyperbole.
Hyperbole, hyperbolic, divisive, inflammatory words.
Yep, he continues.
That is plantation capitalism. Rent should be capped at 20% of someone's salary. That's where we need to take it. And as we rebuild our cities and as we rebuild our country to ensure that every single person has a home, we need to invest and pass the Green New Deal for public housing. Absolutely.
So what he's saying there is initially that was to save energy, right? Is to get our country on the right path, and now they're wanting to attach those dollars to putting people in homes.
I don't understand. I'd have to read that. It doesn't even make any sense to me. A Green New Deal housing plan. You're saying that like they're going to sell credits to get. It's
another lottery system, Charles. It's another system for them to have their hand in our lives.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that they're okay with the federal government taking 55 cents out of every one of your dollars. They're okay with that. But the government can do it. But a landlord can't use the market to assess rental rates and charge rent accordingly. They're going to cap it. These price caps, wage caps, minimum wage requirements. There is an economic moron is what this guy is. You put a cap at 20% on rent, you're never going to see rent prices go higher, and you're never going to see the quality of those rental properties go lower.
That's right. When there's no incentive for capitalism, then the system is always bad. Look at the VA, for example. I've never talked to anybody that's had a serious interaction with the VA that's had a positive outcome, right? Now, that may be an anecdotal story, but the reason I say that is because these people who keep advocating for free health care, right? Free health care for everybody. Well, that's what the VA is. Yeah. And it's terrible.
And in the last taxpayer-funded flyer of Frank Mail that you got from Representative Jim Baird. He wants to pass a same-day scheduling act to ensure that veterans get timely attention and treatment they deserve when they contact the VA. Well, the private market doesn't need a same-day scheduling act.
Right.
That is why I keep saying healthcare is not a right; it's a service, and the private sector shows that. They're despite the fact that they're so heavily regulated, they still provide a good service. They do it despite the fact that they have so much regulation. But no, you're right. I don't use the VA. Anyone that I know that gets out of the military has a good job, that has private insurance. They don't use the VA. The VA is a net to catch people that
fall through the cracks. That's what it's for.
I don't go there, and I don't have insurance.
Well, here's what's interesting about what Bowman said here. Conservatives, over the last several years, especially since 2016, time and time again, the left has labeled us as Nazis. Now, you said, well, they'll call us that. I don't care what someone calls me. I know who I am. I'm not what they're proclaiming that I am, right? But a rose by any other name is still a rose. So let me explain some of the Bowman here, what he's talking about. He's selling it differently than they did back in 1941, but it's the same agenda. The Nazi Party back in 1920, this is 1920, not 1941. You might have seen this video or movie of Hitler giving a speech at a beer hall. Tons of men in there, all dressed up in their Nazi regalia. And the Nazi Party platform had 25 points on it. And I want to go through a couple of these points. And you tell me, as the viewers, as the listeners tonight, who this sounds more like today. Is this the Republican Party or is this the Democrat Party? They try to make us look like in the conservatives, well, you guys are all for all of this, and that makes you a Nazi. They don't realize that Nazi is the short term for National Socialist. They're socialist. Hitler said he was a socialist. He's not a capitalist. He was trying to get rid of capitalism. No different than the left today. Let me go through some of these points here real quick. First of all, the program, this is how it reads. The program of the German Workers' Party is designed to be of limited duration. So what these plans that they've got outlined, they're promising up front, we're only going to do this for a while. And once we get everything in place, then we'll go back to normal. Does that sound familiar? Have we heard that in the last 3 to 4 years? Just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, guys. Just give us 2 weeks. These tactics, folks, have been used over and over and over by oppressive governments and oppressive kings, rulers, and so on. It's nothing new.
And you know who the first to go when it all falls apart, when it's temporary, and the sycophants.
Yep.
The useful idiots.
Yep. That's who Lenin got rid of first.
The rabble-rousers for the socialists that are out there burning cities and doing all that and creating all this havoc. They're the first ones that the leadership in those socialist Nazi parties will turn on you first. And they will eradicate you first.
And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that is because they want to get rid of those people that are most likely to fall prone to another powerful leader that rises up. They don't want the useful idiots out there being used by anybody else. Mm-hmm. Right? Any other strong man, nope, can't have them. I've already used them. We're going to get rid of them. Mao did the same thing, by the way. The leaders have no intention, once the aims announced in it have been achieved, of establishing fresh ones, merely in order to increase artificially the discontent of the masses and so to ensure the continued existence of the party. What they're saying there is that we're not going to continue screaming and yelling about how bad everything is, because once we get everything fixed, we don't need to do that anymore. We're in control. We'll just do whatever we want. Mm-hmm. They tell you up front what their plans are. Now, the first 2 points here.
We're doing that right now anyway.
Well, that's it. That's what I'm saying. Point number 1. We demand the union of all Germans in a greater Germany on the basis of the right of national self-determination. I'm good with that. That sounds like a solid point, right? I'm good with that.
Like nationalism.
Yeah. It's nationalism. We demand equality of rights for the German people in dealings with other nations and the revocation of the peace treaties of Versailles and Saint-Germain. I can understand that too. Since the end of World War I, they'd been in Great Depression throughout Germany. They wanted to be able to interact with the other countries of Europe, and so I can understand why they'd want that. That seems
everybody knows that the Treaty of Versailles led to the Weimar Republic, which led to the wheelbarrowfuls of money. They put too many restrictions on Germany, too much money that they couldn't pay, which led to the Weimar Republic printing off all that money, creating inflation, and then leading to what was World War II. World War II occurred because of World War I.
So if you go through these 25 points, the first 12, or I'm sorry, the first 10 are pretty basic, and there's some things that could probably be shared by all political parties or political ideologies. But when you get to number 11, this starts to tell you exactly who these people are. And then we look at the correlation between what they're saying in 1920 and what they're actually doing today in the Democrat Party and what the progressive left, what they're pushing hardest. Number 11, the abolition of incomes unearned by work. So, Charles, you own a business. If you don't go in there and physically work on a daily basis, you would not be allowed to have a check. You as an owner can't make any money if you don't physically work.
Yeah, they don't like capitalism.
They don't like capitalism. That's the first thing. Point number 13, we demand the nationalization of all businesses which have been formed into corporations.
Uh-oh.
That sound like somebody we know?
That sounds like just about everybody.
Yep. Point number 14, we demand profit sharing in large industrial enterprises. The owner takes all the risk, right?
That's fascism.
That's fascism. They have a loss. The owner eats it. But if they gain something, then everybody makes out. But the workers never take any risk, and they don't have to take the hit if the company fails. Number 15, we demand the extensive development of insurance for the old aged. They wanted a welfare system. Sounding familiar? Point number 17. We demand a land reform suitable for our national requirements, the passing of a law for the expropriation of land for communal purposes without compensation. This should be of special interest to those farmers near wind farms or solar farms or carbon sequestration plants or the LEAP project, because what this plan is right here is socialism, folks. We're going to take the land from those that own it and give it to companies so that they can benefit from it. And in here, they say no compensation. Well, in America, we've got the Constitution that says you can't do that, but they'll do everything in their power to get that land from you as cheaply as they can. They'll drive you into bankruptcy if they have to. 18.
Yeah, let me interject real quick right here before I forget this point before you move on to the next one. This is what Ludwig von Mises writes about in a book I think he calls Interventionism, is that this is that mix between the worst parts of this. That's why socialism, if you take what they say, interventionism, which is what our American government is doing, takes a little bit from each of these systems. It intervenes, and that's the worst thing it does, because it's terrible that the fascists will just take your land from you. Yep. But it's also terrible when the so-called conservative or whatever Republicans in Indiana take your money, your taxpayer dollars, and then just go pay off a few, very few large landowners with taxpayer dollars, because that's the capitalist way to do it. And I went to a meeting last week where the mayor of the community that has been leading this entire LEAP project said that is exactly why Boone County was targeted for this, because Indiana found an 11,000 acre area of land that was owned by 250 to 400 people because of the regulations that were put in place for the last few decades. So they preyed on this area. They specifically went after this area, and it just demonstrates how pernicious that interventionism can be, and not a truly free market system and not a truly socialist system, but this system where someone can get in power, like a Democrat named Holcomb and a Democrat named Matt Gentry, and they can use taxpayer dollars to pay off very few people. That's abhorrent if you really believe in a free market system.
Well, you've made the point, Charles, you've made the point several times that the other side of it, they're saying, well, you don't believe in individual rights. You don't believe that these farmers should be able to sell their property, yada, yada, yada. And no, I don't have any problem with that. Do you have any problem with somebody coming and buying these farmers' lands? I don't have any problem with that. The problem that I have is they're taking money out of my pocket and your pocket and everybody else's to go do it.
That's right. Private property begins with the first dollar that you earn, that you produce out of your own labor. So if anyone wants to scream, that's private property, you can't tell a farmer what you can do. Well, that's my money. That's private property. And you can't take it from me and pay off these farmers. Like it's the same concept.
Yep,
so
exactly.
Let's just take it back to its, its genesis.
Point number 18, and what we're going through for those that are just joining is we're going through the 25 points of the Nazi platform. So this was formed in 1920. You might have seen the video of Hitler giving this speech in the beer hall. This is what he got everybody so riled up about. Point number 18, we demand, and this is where it gets really close to what we're hearing and seeing today. Number 18, we demand the ruthless prosecution of those whose activities are injurious to the common interest. What was your first question, Charles?
I don't know. I was looking at something.
Well, your question when I read these off to you earlier was, well, who gets to pick what the common interest
Who gets
is?
to pick what the common good is? Who gets to pick what the common good is for somebody?
Yep.
I'll tell you who gets to pick. Whoever's in charge.
Right.
And that they're the most to benefit from
exactly.
That's who gets to choose. And by the way, those words, for the common good, have killed more people in the world than any other set of words.
No different than we're all in this together. You've got to do your part. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It's all, for lack of it, it's BS, all of it. Number 18 continues. Common criminals, usurers, that's people who lend money. They were talking about the Jews here. Profiteers, etc., must be punished with death, whatever their creed or race. Point number 19.
That seems strict, but usury is I'm an advocate for getting out of debt. I think usury, the way we see it here, all these credit cards and all this, I've got my issues with usury. Not that you can't do it, but you can do it. But I advise against it.
Me as well. I mean, first thing when the economy started tanking, the first thing that I told my wife is go pay off the credit cards. We got to pay everything off. I don't want that debt. I don't want the 21 or 28% interest that they're going to hit me with. I don't want it. Point number 19. We demand that Roman law, which serves a materialistic world order, be replaced by a German common law. This is where we really get next into the indoctrination. Now tell me, listen closely, and tell me, who does this sound like more? Conservatives or the progressive left? The state must consider, this is point number 20, the state must consider a thorough reconstruction of our national system of education with the aim of opening up to every able and hardworking German the possibility of higher education and of thus obtaining advancement. The curricula for all educational establishments must be brought in line with the requirements of practical life, whatever that means. The aim of the school must be to give the pupil, beginning with the first sign of intelligence, a grasp of the notion of the state. And in the document, they use the capital S. When they use a capital S, what does that mean?
Yeah, the state, the nation.
State, the nation. Yeah. Through the study of civic affairs, meaning you'll be indoctrinated to believe the German youth. No different than what we're seeing today. We demand the education of gifted children of poor parents, whatever their class or occupation, at the expense of the state. Again, who does this sound like? We're wrapping up here. Point number 22, we demand the abolition of a mercenary, i.e. professional army, and a formation of a people's army. Why would Germany need to make sure that they didn't have any militias that could rise up against them?
Well, we all know why that is.
For the same reason that the ATF and the FBI infiltrates legal groups so they can see if they can get them to commit a crime or coerce them into committing a crime. These guys generally don't do it on their own. They're just getting together to shoot and do their drills, and the FBI comes along, and all of a sudden they're all criminals.
Ruby Ridge, by the way, everybody know Ruby Ridge. They ATF went in there and asked him to saw off that shotgun. He said no, but he did it to somebody and sawed off his shotgun. And then it wasn't long enough. They said no, 2 more inches. Take 2 more inches off.
Yep.
They set him up. His name eludes me right now.
This is Randy Weaver.
Randy Weaver.
Yeah. Point number 23. We demand legal warfare. Now, I want everybody to pay close attention to this. And if you're going to save anything from tonight's program, this is the clip that you save, because this is what we're living through right now. This is what the Nazi Party was propagating and what they were promoting in 1920 and what they actually did when they came to power. We demand legal warfare on deliberate political mendacity and its dissemination in the press. For those that don't know what mendacity means, that means lies or untruths or what they consider to be disinformation.
Who gets to determine that? Who gets to determine what mendacity is and what the lies are? We're seeing it right now in front of us. Yep. My goodness. we're seeing right now is they say that that Alex Jones or somebody is disseminating untruths, when in reality, a month later, you find out that he was absolutely telling the truth, and it was the mainstream media that was lying and disseminating false information. Look at COVID, for goodness sakes. Look at the whole thing about the vaccines. They told everybody it'll stop it in its tracks. It'll stop the spread. You get the vaccine, you're not going to get COVID. Biden said it. Maddow said it. All the people.
Don Lemon said it. They all said it. They were all doing it. That was the promise, right? If we do what they say, we'll get out from underneath this terrible situation that we're in. And again, what we find time and time again, it's a tactic. It's a strategy used by powerful people to get you to do what they want. Let's see here. They go on and they say that
Can I make a point here? Let me make a point real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
These people don't send their children to the same schools that you're sending your children
Absolutely not.
Again, I looked it up. I was looking at all this stuff today. The wealthiest, making over $200,000, they have the highest rates of private school education. They do not send their children to government schools, and they don't send them to state colleges. And I looked up, there's a guy that wrote a lot about this back in the day, Albert J. Knock is his name. And I took a quote from him, and he said, these schools, they were designed to accommodate the lowest intellectual denominator rather than the highest. So that's why they want, that last point you said, that's why they want control of the colleges. That's why they want to send everybody to a higher education, because higher education is designed to accommodate the lowest intellectual denominator, not the highest. So they can indoctrinate you, create a bunch of midwits that just fall in line, that are sheep, that listen to the government narrative or whatever, and they just fall in line. So be very wary of that.
So as
How
we
many
go,
people did I just offend?
well, if they're conservatives, none. They're clapping, they're cheering right now. Here's another thing that's interesting, because we're hearing the same exact thing. A year or so ago, the Department of Homeland Security attempted to create the Truth Ministry, right? They were going to create a division inside their agency to be able to track who's telling the truth and who's not, and informing people of that. The same thing was happening in Nazi Germany, folks. The exact same thing. The publishing of papers, which are, so let me go back to this. I'm going to read this whole number 23 again. But we demand legal warfare on deliberate political mendacity and its dissemination in the press. To facilitate the creation of a German national press, we demand, not ask, we demand. And there's several points here, but the one that stuck out to me was the publishing of papers which are not conducive to the national the national welfare must be forbidden. We demand the legal prosecution of all those tendencies in art and literature which corrupt our national life, and the suppression of cultural events which violate this demand. You don't have freedom of speech. The state will tell you what you can and can't say, and they'll pick which subjects you can speak out against and which ones you can't. Sound familiar today? The same exact thing.
They control the truth. And they teach that truth in those higher education that they're trying to establish. That's where they teach you the truth.
Yep. We demand freedom. This is the last one. Point number 24. We demand freedom for all religious denominations in the state. Sounds good, doesn't it? Here comes the but. Provided they do not threaten its existence nor offend the moral feelings of the German race. So tell me, feel free to jump in. Who does that sound more like? The conservatives that are being called Nazis, or the Democrats that actually are?
Yeah, no, that's right. I can't say it to anybody. That's exactly what it is. This is projection at its highest level, as they project their feelings and thoughts upon us. You said it earlier, I think today, these people that are in power, they're all leftist socialist Democrats. Like, our state is run by a socialist Democrat. You never see Republicans going to the Democrat Party and running in the Democrat Party, trying to take over the Democrat Party. There's been a complete infiltration of leftists, Democrats in conservative circles to try to take over the one party that was actually in its core values actually is trying to conserve a way of life, a system of government. Okay, a system of government that lived under this, that saw this, that set it up and said, you can't do this ever again in this country. You can never do this again. And it's happening again. And if we give this up, if we give up our rights to guns, if we give our rights to assemble, if we give up our rights to free speech, we're going to have to really fight hard to get those back. So we have a system that was put in place to say, government can never do this. It was established to protect all these God-given rights, and you cannot do anything to take them away. You're here to just ensure that your people are free. And we are so far from that, because so many socialists and so many people that project onto conservatives have infiltrated our circles, and they are running, and they are calling themselves us.
Right.
They are calling themselves Republicans. They are even calling themselves conservative.
Right. And they're not. They're anything but. Charles, one of the things that I think is important for us to remember is that what we've been talking about, for those of us that have been involved in this fight for the last 10, 15 years, what we've been screaming about since 2020 is that it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. You have to get involved. You have to vote. You have to show up to meetings. You have to make your voice heard. Those people who say, nothing ever happens, or my vote doesn't count. If you don't vote, it doesn't count. Nothing ever happens because you didn't do anything. I'll give you an example. If you've got a car that's broken, take that car and park it in the parking lot. Just leave it there for 2 weeks and go back and see if it's fixed itself. Congress cannot fix itself. It's created the problems that we're suffering through. The people who created the problems can't fix the problems. No different than the car can fix itself. It's important that we remember that, and we know that what we're expecting to happen in 2020 has already kicked off. We've got information about the Kyle Rittenhouse event that was last night. There was a mob that was there, and we'll be right back to talk about that right after this.
My name's Charles Bookwalter, and I'm running for U.S. Congress. In the average campaign commercial, the announcer, backed by patriotic music, would inform you I'm a former Green Beret and Bronze Star recipient. Or you'd be told how my opponent, Jim Baird, voted to send billions to Ukraine, or that he authored the bill to bring carbon sequestration plants and Joe Biden's Green New Deal to Indiana. But this isn't that kind of ad. I just want to let you know, for the first time in 6 years, you have a choice in the Republican primary. I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I humbly ask for your vote on May 7th. I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret experience just got even better.
Did you want to join me in our Green Beret experience fundraiser, but just couldn't swing it? Times are tough. I get it. Well, I got some great news for you. A generous group of Bookwalter for Congress supporters are offering matching funds so you can attend the Special Forces experience. You pay half, the other half is matched. And you pay in full, you can bring a buddy.
Until matching funds are exhausted, you can now save big on attending the Green Beret and Special Operators Experience. While spaces last, donate $100, get upgraded to the $200 package. Donate $200 or more, bring a buddy for free.
This is your opportunity to rub shoulders with some of America's most highly trained and lethal warriors while supporting my America First campaign.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret and Special Operators Experience and Fundraiser, March 22nd and 23rd, Fowler, Indiana. Visit bookwalterforcongress.com to order your tickets before these matching funds are gone.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Why is Jim Baird working so hard to suck CO2 out of the air, turn it into a sludge, and then force it deep into the Hoosier heartland? More importantly, what happens if this sludge gets into our water supply? This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter. One of the issues that we have, Charles, and we've talked about it at length, is that our education system has led to a number of different bad issues. Everything from Bowman saying what he's saying and not knowing the truth about our nation, to kids today not having any idea of a positive role model. This was a street interview that was done here in the last week in California, and they're asking very specific questions. The first question, if you're not able to hear, the first question is, can you name someone who has a sex tape?
You guys name one celebrity with a sex tape.
Kim Kardashian.
Pamela Anderson.
Kim Kim Kardashian.
Can you guys name one good role model for kids?
Yes. Wolf.
This is sad.
Barney.
Elmo. Like a person?
Like a famous person, not a character, a person.
No.
No one's heard of Jesus before?
Do you think it's just one?
One good influence for kids.
Like an actual. Oh man. It's. Damn. Okay.
Wow.
I gotta think about that. I could throw it in the air, maybe Taylor Swift or something.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, she's a
Okay.
cool girl. She's nice.
No one comes to my mind to be like a really good model for kids, to be honest. Yeah.
So if you listen to what they said there, I don't know if you heard it in the background, somebody who's passing by or somebody who's standing there says, haven't any of you ever heard of Jesus Christ?
Oh, I didn't hear that. No kidding. Good. Wow.
It's like zing, zing. This tells you what this system has done to our kids, to our youth, and so on, and why it's so important to get control back under our educational system. They're indoctrinating our youth. Our youth is dumber and dumber and dumber. Charles, my grandfather was schooled in a one-room schoolhouse. One of the members of his class went to NASA and helped put men on the moon. And today, we've got the biggest schools, the most complex systems for education, and we have to warn our kids not to eat Tide Pods. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was just meeting with one of my neighbors just the other day, a very close older couple that we've gotten to know since we moved out here. And he is from Canada, still has an accent, wonderful man, just an incredible neighbor. And I found out last night, because we were talking about education, and I found out last night that he has a 9th grade education. Okay. This man, and his wife said he's the smartest guy I know. He's one of the smartest guys I know. I didn't know that. He's a millwright. He's mechanical. He's got ideas. Like, he's smart. He thinks about things. He's successful. He's got a homestead, owns property, and is kind. And all these things, and he has a 9th grade education, and he came from Canada here. He spoke French, did not speak any English, and he managed to do all that. And probably it's because he was not indoctrinated in schools and spent 8 hours a day in school. He learned and worked and was active and met people. You know, one of my fears a little bit is, I own a fast casual restaurant, and I look forward to the very near future when my daughters are 10 or 11 years old, where if at any time, if I want to go there, they can come with me, and they work. And if we go to a lunch hour, then they stand behind that register. They know how to count back money. They know how to work it. And I've always said, as soon as they can reach that register on a stool, they're going to be in there learning how to do it. They're going to walk.
You're exploiting them, Charles. It's child labor.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't it? It's almost a fear of mine. I'm like, geez, I know I'm going to get a call from Child Protective Services or school or truancy or something. But in reality, this is a better way, everyone. Yeah. It's a better way. You can teach your kids in 3 to 4 hours a day and then go get another skill instead of sending them to school all day long. I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody, and it shouldn't be. And here's why. Indiana and other states across the nation are already starting to adopt these policies in communities. Yep. In a local community where my fast casual restaurant is, in fact, the school corporation has purchased an old Marsh grocery store and are now converting it, if it's not done already, into a trade skills school center. So the boys that shouldn't be sitting in high school for 8 hours a day, believe me, I was there. I hated it. I was miserable. I did not like to sit in school that long. They go to school and learn reading, writing, arithmetic for the first half of the day. Then at lunch, they go eat lunch, and then they go over and they learn a trade. No kidding. No kidding. That's the way that it should be, and that's the way it was. And even going so far back as to say a few generations ago, they didn't need to go learn a trade. They went to an apprentice.
Yep.
So it would solve so many issues, labor issues. It would bring down the cost of labor.
It would bring down the cost of college. Right? I mean, I'm a prime example of that. I graduated from Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis. They had a radio TV program. I got into it at 14 years old. At 16, I had a job in Indianapolis at WZPL. Now think about that. 16 years old on the radio in Indianapolis. And I had a career in radio. I did that for 30 years. I was on the air somewhere in this country for 30 years. I'm a college dropout. It didn't work for me. But I was smart. I was fast on my feet. I think quickly, and I've got a sense of humor, and so morning shows love me. My claim to fame is I'm Bob and Tom's first producer. So, folks, I got that from a public school. At Ben Davis at the time, by the way, you could also get your first 2 years of apprenticeship out as an electrician. You could do the same thing with plumbing. You could get your pilot's license. I learned how to wire houses. I learned all the electrical knowledge that I have in high school.
Yeah.
I took it in high school. And so my point is, and to your point as well, these systems have to come back. And if they don't come back through school, they got to come back through the community. We need to bring back our production and everything back here to the country. That's what Trump was trying to do. And now they're saying, well, he didn't do that. We experienced the best 4 years in this country in my lifetime. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, look, this is also what homeschooling offers to people. Not to beat this up, but like why did you excel at radio? Because that's what you wanted to do. You found your niche. You liked it. You wanted to do it. That's the beauty of homeschooling. Not every child is a cookie cutter child, and I can even see that in my 3 daughters. One likes this. One's good at this. One's good at this. And you can nurture that. You can focus on that. That's what these apprenticeships do. That's what these trade schools do. Instead of forcing, like my generation, forcing all these kids into one. Like once you choose a path in college, you darn well better like it. Like, for example, I worked for Intuitive Surgical. I used to call on doctors. I'd call on a lot of gynecologists. There were a number of gynecologists that their careers were not great and they were open to me about this. They became a gynecologist and they didn't like medicine. They didn't like it, and they didn't like surgery, and that's a big part of surgery. And then they'd have a child and they didn't want to leave their child, and they would go back. So their practice struggled. But the reason is because they weren't given an option to kind of look around and figure out what it is they like. What do you want to do? Because once you choose that route and you take on $500,000 of debt to go to school, well, you better go get a job where you can make $250,000 a year so you can pay off all that debt. And they get trapped in that debt cycle. I saw it all the time in medicine. I saw it every day in medicine.
Well, what we started with in this segment, Charles, was Nick Freitas talking about education and how to get kids out of the system. He didn't say get your kids out of school, get your kids out of public school. He said get them out of the places that are making them learn to hate America. We saw the violence in our schools. We saw Jamal Bowman, Representative Bowman, talking about this Green New Deal where he wants to put money. It's because of the uneducation of our legislative members. They have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what the Constitution is. They don't know what our founding principles are. They have no idea. They're Marxist.
Basic economics. He's never opened an economics book.
Yep.
And he's legislating an economic practice that's devastating, absolutely devastating to real world economics. It may look good on paper. You can say it all day long. Great. You cap it at 20%, but that has economic consequences.
Yep. And that's one of the things I've always said about government and politicians when they make these big programs is it's always out of an emergency, right? So there's no time to think. There's no time to wait. We've got to do it right now today. And there's the crime of unintended consequences. Yeah. And they're guilty of it every time.
And those unintended consequences, guess what they mandate, which ensures a next set of interventions by the government to make up, to fix those unintended consequences. And this is an example of what we're talking about. We had a good system where kids were educated in smaller, rural, they learned the 3 R's, they learned 3 hours a day, then they went and apprenticed. Well, the government took over education and created this mess that we have now. And then the interventions occur, and all of a sudden we're back to a system where they're teaching trade schools and then back to an apprenticeship after wasting trillions in dollars and ruining people's lives and making kids miserable and putting a bunch of boys on ADHD drugs because they don't want to sit in school all day long, and they're diagnosing them, feminizing them, indoctrinating them, ruining their lives, making them bullied. I mean, being bullied, socializing them through bullying them.
Yep.
It's madness.
And it doesn't stop unless we get involved. And you have to get involved. And the way to get involved is to vote. That's the most peaceful thing that you can do. Go vote. Make your voice heard through your vote. And don't wait until November to do it. Do it in the primary, because that's when your election happens. The voting in the fall is between the parties. It's for the parties to win. In the spring, in the primaries, that's for you to pick the candidate that best suits you. And it doesn't have to be the guy who's the incumbent. In fact, it shouldn't be the guy who's the incumbent, especially if that incumbent's been there a long, long time. I think it's funny. My wife was looking at Jim Baird's website, his political website, and I don't know why they've kept it there, but it's still there from his run in 2016. And what it says right on the home page is, we need to replace the old politicians in Washington. We need to get new leadership in Washington. That was 6 years ago, Jim. One of the things that happened this week, and I wanted to bring this up because it's important. What we're trying to tie together tonight, the doom and gloom show, is all the things that are happening in our country that's not getting covered much by the news, but is making huge impacts on what we can do, say, and hear, and so on. I think it's interesting that this week on Monday, I was driving back from St. Louis, and we listened to this on the way back. It was the brief or the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court. And the following piece is from Ketanji Jackson Brown, Justice Brown. She has a problem with the government not being able to censor us.
Justice Jackson?
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods.
Okay, so Charles, does the federal government have any free speech rights?
No.
They do not. The government has no rights. We have rights. We're citizens. The government has no rights.
We the people have rights.
We the people have the rights. So if we determine that we want to hamstring the government from being able to censor us, isn't that our right?
We already did. That's what the Constitution is.
There you go.
The Constitution is the chains that we bound the government down by. And it's laughable to even think how far we are from it.
Well, you've got a Supreme Court justice. Charles, you've got a Supreme Court justice that is advocating for the government to pick and choose when they can censor you.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing. This is impeachable. This is absolutely impeachable for someone to have this idea sitting on the Supreme Court. And remember, this comes after, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that a political pundit got on and said, these Christian nationalists, they're crazy. You know, these Christian nationalists think that their rights came from God, not government and the Supreme Court.
Right.
This is an assault on you, America. Wake up. This is an all-out assault on all the things that established that everything that led to this incredible experiment called America are absolutely under assault.
Yep.
There is no question about it. And I know many of you are awake to that. But this is why Kramer keeps talking about an election. Right? And I know many of you think that this won't be a fair election. And you're probably right. It may not be fair, but that's why every single person has to go out and vote in the primary, because if they're going to cheat, then we need them to cheat at a level that is incredible to make up for all the engagement of the patriots that come out. Why am I able to talk like this? Why am I able to speak truth to power? Why do I not fear it? Because I know that only about 10% of Americans vote. I also know that the other 90% think like I do.
Right.
They think like we do. These numbers that I was looking at for educators, the large majority of people that are educating their children make less than $50,000. Why? Because they're the common sense class. They're the people that actually look around and think. They're the people, they come from homes that have one person that works and a one person that stays home and takes care of the children, and they still only make $50K. So if you tell yourself, I can't afford to homeschool my child, I'm telling you, you can't afford not to. So my point is that if everyone goes out and votes, we will show the ruling class, the managerial class, who has been telling us that their way is the way, that they are wrong. We don't agree. The silent majority has to get out and vote in the primary. Like Kramer said, the primary is the people's election. So if you want a people's candidate, then you have to vote in the primary, and you can't sit at home on your hands, folks. You can't do it, America, and you can't do it, Hoosiers.
Well, you can't sit there on your hands and expect anything to change.
Because we're the majority. You can speak proudly and loudly. You can say that Christ is king. Most people believe that. Don't be shy. You can say, I believe in faith, family, and freedom. It's okay. Who cares if that one mocker mocks you? Who cares? They're in the minority.
Yep.
Understand that. That's a big part of our campaign.
And they want to be bullies about it, Charles. That's the whole thing. They're going to be bullies about it because they don't have any numbers. They have to be loud. They have to be boisterous. They have to be the pain in the ass. That's what they have to be to seem bigger than they are. It's no different than a bear's charging you. You try to go, right? You try to be bigger than you are. It's no different with them. They don't have the numbers. All they've got is the media, and they've got some crazies that are willing to go out and create crimes to get their way. That's where we are in this nation. And if we don't stand, it continues. It only gets worse. Up next, we're going to talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse riot that happened last night, the Haiti Civil War, Catherine Herridge, and Dr. Ron Paul. They've got some information that you might be interested in about a Black Swan event. We'll talk about all that next.
Hoosiers have been clear. They do not support Joe Biden's Green New Deal. So why is Jim Baird fighting so hard to bring Joe Biden's Green New Deal to Indiana? Learn more at firejimbaird.com. If Jim Baird is really so against Joe Biden's Green New Deal, why is he supporting so many of its big spending programs? Why does Jim Baird support Joe Biden's Green New Deal? Learn more at firejimbaird.com. On May 7th, vote Charles Bookwalter for Congress.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Who is Charles Bookwalter? Charles is a husband, father, entrepreneur, and former Green Beret. But most importantly, Charles Bookwalter is a constitutional conservative. Charles Bookwalter will work to close our borders, ensuring the safety and security of our nation. Charles will fight to secure your personal medical freedoms, giving you complete control over your own healthcare decisions. And Charles Bookwalter will continue his fight to secure our elections, ensuring every vote counts. On May 7th, you have a choice.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter.
We've had quite a week this last week with a lot of information coming out. We've got Trump on trial. We've got the Civil War in Haiti. We've got Ketanji Jackson Brown saying that the government should be able to censor you. And then Kyle Rittenhouse goes to a university in Memphis, and this happens. Let me see if I get the right one here. Make sure I get the right one. This was last night as Rittenhouse gave his speech. The attendees, as they were leaving, were surrounded by this crowd. The police had to come in and escort them out. This is the first action. Charles, we have been talking for the last several months about what we expect to happen in 2024. Is what we're seeing here, in your belief, your eyes, the kickoff? Have they lit the candle?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know, but these elections are a major concern. And when I see this, I see this intimidation, this mob of people that are willing to go out and violently or aggressively go after people for merely listening to someone. And let me just say, Kyle Rittenhouse did an incredible thing. He went to go help his community. He went to go act as a medic in his community. And you people that know that my skill set as a Green Beret and the training that I have had an incredible amount of training And I only hope to think that if I was in that situation, I would have been able to do what he did. And in fact, I've told people the reason I think that he handled that so well is because he wasn't trained to kill people.
Right.
Otherwise, he would have killed a bunch of people. He was
Well, Charles, if you were in a position where you being chased down the street like that, and you felt that you were being closed in on, you heard the footsteps behind you. At some point, you're going to turn and take a knee, right?
Oh, dude. Oh, I would have handled it completely different than he did. That's what I'm saying. This guy showed so much reservation. He said so much grace. He didn't want to do it. Back. People have no idea. Trained killers would have never have done that. They would have found cover and concealment, and they would have started blasting away at people that are attacking them and threatening their lives. And he would have been okay to do that. They were literally threatening his life.
Right.
And he did not pull the trigger until there was a visible threat, like with a weapon and all that. It was incredible patience that he showed. It was clearly, it's a miracle. It was God ordained. It was God intervention. God is a living God, and God works in our lives. That is an act of God looking out for that young man. I can't see it any other way. The way that happened.
Exactly.
Really
well, and for people that are watching this right now and saying, "Oh, I don't think that that's going to happen across the entire nation," this is what's going on right now in Haiti. You're hearing about some of it on the news. They're not showing the visuals, but we've already heard the reports that the gangs have resorted to cannibalism because they don't have enough food in the country. Charles, speak on your fear of what happens in this nation if the government decides to play games to retain their power. How fast does this happen in America?
Well, we can see it unfolding right in front of us. And I just want to remind people that, you know, there's a lot of talk of black swan events. I think we'll probably have some clips about that. But, you know, these aren't it, ladies and gentlemen. War is the history of mankind. We had a system and a way of life that got us out of this kind of perpetual skirmishes and small gangs running the world. So war is not a black swan event. This is the reality of human nature from the beginning of time. An economic collapse is not a black swan event. Poverty is the history of mankind. It's just that our nation, our system of constitutional republic has pulled us out of it. Capitalism has pulled us out and then led us to see a world that is so unknown to the kings before us. Americans live better than the kings of the ancient times.
Yep.
Poverty is the constant theme. War is the constant theme. So that's why it's so important to protect this constitutional republic that we have. It's so important to instill, and it's why I tell these young men to follow Jesus, to have a family, to understand the core family union, to be a good leader, understand those principles of being peaceful, slow to anger, strong and confident, and truthful. These are this is what you need as a leader in this system that we have, so that we don't have these kinds of conflicts.
Right.
People don't understand what this could look like if we have an unfair election, or if these people try to burn down the cities again. I don't think conservatives and patriots across the United States are going to let these leftists burn down the cities again.
No, I think it's over. I think that game has been played, and I think they're going to try something different. In fact, let's get into that real quickly here. Catherine Herridge and Senator Ron Paul, former Senator Ron Paul, they have a different point of view as to what's going to happen. They don't believe the status quo is going to be carried on. This is what Catherine Herridge had to say along with Ron Paul.
I just feel a lot of concern that 2024 may be the year of a black swan event. This is a national security event with high impact that's very hard to predict.
I think we're reaching this point where some sudden thing is going to happen. I believe in that theory of the black swan.
Yes.
It's going to pop up, and It's not going to be controllable. But people, you ask, what can they do? I think the most important thing is understand what's going on, is education.
And that right there, Charles, is what we're doing here tonight. That's what we're doing. You're being educated on what's going on and what you should do to prepare for what's about to happen next in this nation. I'm not a doom and gloom guy like you, Charles. I'm an optimistic guy. I'm always trying to find the solution, and I can't find the solution to get us out of this mess. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that, and I can't speak for the great Ron Paul. I mean, what an incredible man! Ron Paul could run this country better than almost one of the greatest presidential candidates in the history of America. And him standing on stage in front of Rudy Giuliani and calling him out for being a war hawk was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. But I think that female there, I think a lot of people's heads want to go, when they think Black Swan, they think civil unrest and war or economic collapse. Again, those are not, in my mind, when I think about it, those are not Black Swan events. Those are occurrences that occur regularly when we let these government people get out of control. When we get government out of control, that's what's happening. So what this could look like, it could be no election at all, for example. That's a Black Swan. That's never happened in the United States. It could be no election at all. We already know it's probably going to be unfair, but what if we don't have one? That's Black Swan. Here's another thing for many people to think about. It could be spiritual. We've never seen a spiritual event happen in our lifetime like what I'm saying happens. It could be a spiritual, biblical event that occurs. That would be a Black Swan event, right? Something that never occurs, something that we've never seen before.
Well, don't you find it odd that Oklahoma is putting the National Guard into the streets for the solar eclipse?
Yeah, and New York is putting the National Guard in the subways.
Yep.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. There's a lot of things around this eclipse that, and again, I believe, as a Bible-believing man, I believe that the sun, the moon, the stars, they do have some kind of spiritual definition and impact in our lives. It could be a gun grab. We've never seen a full gun grab in the United States before. No. That could be a Black Swan. That's something that's never happened in the United States before. And I'm not talking about an AR ban.
Right.
I'm talking
about similar to what happened in Katrina. When Katrina happened, the Sheriff's Department and the National Guard went into people's homes and stripped them of their firearms.
They did. They marched down the streets of New Orleans, and they removed people's weapons out of their home, and they were trying to defend themselves. And this could be at a national scale. And it could be because of all these things you're seeing around where they're trying to call Trump and people like us a threat to democracy, a threat to America, a threat to
the liberties and freedoms of those on the left. That's what they keep saying, that they're the threat. But as I posted today, the Nazis weren't the ones being censored. The Nazis weren't the ones being rounded up. The Nazis weren't the ones that were being put under undue pressure for lawfare. The Nazis weren't the ones that were assassinated because of their religion or their belief. It's important to put things in context. General Flynn does it here. Listen closely.
Mark my words. These are everything that you just talked about, and the things that I'm going to talk about here in this movie shortly. These are all knowable things. Okay, these are things that we know. These are the things that we can imagine. What these people are going to try to come up with, Benny, and this is for your audience and for your ability to influence. They're going to try to come up with things that are unknowable. And and in the world of military operations, or even in the world of just things, we call them Black Swan events, right? Black Swan events are things that nobody imagined could occur, and yet they did, right? And then they have these incredibly, mostly devastating effects. So I think that's what we have got to be thinking about. And I think as we talk to our audiences and we look for feedback from different people, all of these things, and then we have to be prepared on our side. We have to be prepared to immediately respond to these scenarios, right? Like, I think a scenario is these people just decide, look, there's no way in the world that they can win a legitimate, fair election, so let's not have one. So in order to not have one, how do they create the conditions in order to not have an election? Now, that's a scenario. It's not a scenario that I that I want to have as an outcome, but I definitely, that is a scenario that I can imagine. And
So how would that work, General?
Yeah. Well, so
are you predicting a black swan event before the election that would stop the election?
I am predicting some type of an event that will cause such a dramatic shift in what is happening. I mean, we already are talking about an economic collapse, right? Because all the central bank digital currency craze that's going on right now, and the manipulation of the global economy and certainly the U.S. economy. So we know about that. That's not a black swan event. But how do you achieve it? How do you what is the proverbial straw, right? That's pulled out of the camel or whatever that causes that. So there has to be, and the fact that I can think about these things, because my world has always been the world of thinking about how our enemies are thinking. And so if I can think these things, then they certainly can, because I don't assess myself as some evil, genius.
Let me jump in there real quick, Charles. Are you an evil genius?
Negative.
Okay. So you're not an evil genius. I'm not an evil genius, but I'm a strategist. I'm a thinker. That's what I do for a living. I help people spend money for advertising and marketing. I'm a strategist. Okay? So in looking at that from that position, if I put my thinking cap on and put it into, okay, what's most likely to happen and how is it going to happen and what is it going to do, right? And I've got unlimited amounts of money, I can do anything. And what Flynn is talking about here, what is so crazy about what he's saying is, we've got a border that's been wide open for 3 years. We had a character caught on the border earlier this week who, when asked, said yes, he supports Hezbollah and came into the U.S. to build bombs. Is that a black swan event? Is that what we're talking about here? Potentially.
Yeah, potentially. I just read earlier today that New York City has an unknown, enormous illegal immigrant camp. Huge, enormous. That they were keeping it hidden from the population.
Texas has one as well.
Say again?
Texas has one as well.
Think about this, people. Think about this. The war, economic collapse, that is not uncommon for those people that are surging over our border.
Yep.
Think about what that means. We're not used to it. Anyone that's not been in combat, anyone that's not lived out of their rucksack for months at a time in difficult situations, lived without plumbing and all that stuff, you've never seen that before. You're not used to that.
Right.
These people that are surging across the border, they have.
Right.
They've lived it. A lot of times this is what they're fleeing from. And so this is not something that is going to disrupt their mental state.
No, and if they're offered, Charles, if they're offered the opportunity to fight for a side, to keep food in their belly and a roof over their head, guess what they'll do? In a heartbeat.
Yes, we saw that in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, the Afghanis fought for whoever came and gave them money and food.
Yep.
When Americans left and the Taliban came in, they just switched allegiance and went and fought for the. When the Taliban left and Americans came in, they'd say, "Sure, we'll fight for you. Are you going to pay us?"
Right.
Yeah.
Flynn continues.
I studied enough of our enemies, and that includes both domestic and foreign. Now, especially now. So that's where I'm coming from. On the movie front, because I know we don't have that much time. On the movie front, this is a couple. Actually, it's a lifetime in the making, but it's certainly a couple of years. In it, it's a very raw story. I think people are going to see. People will meet members of my family that they have not met before. My family is a very strong family. Tucker Carlson is also in this film. Devin Nunes is also in this film. Very raw, very, very honest, very authentic, very sort of truth-telling. I do personally call out people in the administration prior to Trump, so in the Obama administration, to include Obama. I also call out people in the Trump administration. And a couple that are very specific, and I'll sort of withhold that so I tease that a little bit out there. Because I want people to understand that this is not just about the ruthlessness of Obama, but this is also about the manipulation and the way that people in our own uniparty establishment want to keep things as is. They love the as-is world of Washington, D.C. And if we continue to, down this path of as is, Washington D.C., things normal, we're not going to have a country here after if we have a free and fair election. Which, number one, I don't think we're going to have a fair election. I want to believe, and probably more of me believes that we're going to have an election, Benny, but fair is in the eye of the beholder.
If you had to take someone's word or their prediction about what's likely to happen in the nation, would Flynn's opinion matter? Is that something serious that people should be paying attention to?
I think it is, yeah, because of a few things that he said. I completely, you've already heard it. I completely agree with what he's saying. There's things that are already, because Flynn and I, we've seen this before. That's why he said the same thing. We're saying the same thing. An economic collapse, poverty is a history. That's the history of mankind. War, that's the history. These aren't economic. It's going to be something that you've not seen before. That's why I really think, I'm not prophecy or anything like that. Never such thing. I've never had anything like that. But it could be something spiritual. It could be a gun grab. Like, it's almost like they're prepping the way right now for some kind of gun grab. They're talking about gun violence a lot. I see tweets by Kamala Harris and Biden about taking. They're saying assault weapons, but it could be an all-out gun grab in the United States.
Well, let's go back. You said it could be an AR grab, right? Charles, even if it's just an AR grab, when I say just an AR grab, I want to use air quotes, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Are you going to allow that to happen? I'm not going to allow that to happen.
No. I might have one or two.
That didn't go down in a sinking boat, right?
No, you make a good point. Of course, you make a great point. It doesn't even have to be an all-out. It could just be what they call assault rifles, or ARs. You're exactly right. And that people will absolutely, unequivocally not stand for that. And he said something. He said that we have to be ready to immediately respond.
Right.
That's why he said. And this is why we're asking you to join us. That's why I'm asking you, all those people that are sitting on your hands, all those people that are saying that call me when the revolution comes. You're not going to be ready to respond if you're just sitting at home.
Agreed.
This is so much a big part of our campaign. We're asking you to join us now, to be political. We need political leadership. We need leaders that see what is going on and can respond. That's exactly what he said.
Well, and Charles, here it's important. I think it's important to also say, and to let people know, preparing for what you think is going to happen is not preparing for war, right? It's not us gathering and getting ourselves in a position to where we can push war or push revolution or push. I do not want that. I don't want war. I do not want to fight my neighbor. I don't want to have happen in this nation what happened for 4 years in the 1860s. I do not want that. You don't want that. And so by saying this is the analogy that I use all the time, is that life hasn't changed since the playground. What we're doing right now is no different than getting 4 or 5 of your buddies together and saying, hey, if the bully comes over, will you help me? Will you support me? Well, we're adults now. We're not kids on the playground. The roles that we play are much larger, and the scale is much larger. Today, when people overreach, you don't get a bloody nose, you die. And that's what we're concerned about. Yeah. You've seen it happen in action. I haven't seen that happen. We've joked about it before, is that, if, to your point, the SHTF happens, right? In that position, I'm not in a position at 60 years old to go fight on the front lines. I'm not going to join the revolution or the Civil War. I'm too old.
Well, you say that, Kramer, but I just saw today that there's some kind of, I don't know if it's legit. Yeah, I said it looks absolutely legit, and it came from a legitimate source, that the Army is initiating a potential recall on retired military personnel.
Holy cow. Because they can't meet their recruitment numbers.
That's correct. They've done this before.
Yep.
Stop loss. They did it when I was in. They did stop loss where they would not let people get out. They force them to deploy or stay in a deployment. Stop loss was a big thing. I just saw this document. It looks completely legit. But the Army is they're not recalling. It's an action, a notice that they could recall retired military personnel. So no, it is it's the same thing. You prepare for peace. And look,
let me put something in there. And I want, because people, I get blamed a lot because I'm very vitriolic. I'm very passionate about how I feel about this nation, and so I start talking this way, Charles. They say, "Oh, you want a revolution? I don't want that. I don't want that." Right? To your point, I want to be prepared. I have a spare tire in my car. I hope to never use it ever.
Mm-hmm. Good point. You got some good car analogies today.
Sometimes they fit in, sometimes they don't. Hey, folks, I want to let you know that what Charles and I have been talking about tonight, it has been the doom and gloom show. This is some of the worst things that are happening, and it's not everything. It's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got election interference. We've got corruption. We've got sexual crimes. We've got pedophilia that's going on at the top levels of government. And this is not a conspiracy theory. They just busted another guy a couple days ago. They got another politician a couple days ago for pedophilia. They just got somebody in, I can't remember where, it was in Washington. He works for the government in Washington. They just busted him. So these things that you've been told are conspiracy theories are not. The more and more we learn, the more that this is happening, and they're covering it up because very wealthy people, very powerful people are scared, for lack of a better term, crapless. They really are. That's the best way to put it. And the way that we fight back against this is doing what Charles is doing, is that, and this is why, Charles, I'm going to blow smoke up your butt here for a moment. We talked about it today. I'm on social media quite a bit. I talk about this on a regular basis, and I've said for the last 4 years, get involved, get involved, get involved, get involved. And in talking with Charles, he goes, well, why don't you run for office? I came up with all kinds of reasons as to why I wasn't going to do it. And finally, one night in bed, I don't know, maybe it was the Lord talking to me, but I'm laying there in bed in the middle of the night, and it dawned on me, you cannot preach this message if you don't follow through yourself. You're disingenuous. You've got to play the part. You can't just be the guy in the soapbox. So I'm running for county council in Boone County, county council at large, because we need leadership. We need people that have the ability to say no. And we were talking earlier, and I didn't get to make this point, but I think it's interesting. You said that when you were a kid, you were a scrapper. When I was a kid, I was a scrapper. I didn't have any problem getting in a fight. I stood up for my rights. When I got bullied, I would take a beating rather than take the bullying. And today we're in a position to where we have to do that as Americans. Do you want to continue to get bullied, or are you willing to take a beating? But there is hope. And we'll talk about that next, right after this.
My name's Charles Bookwalter, and I'm running for U.S. Congress. In the average campaign commercial, the announcer, backed by patriotic music, would inform you I'm a former Green Beret and Bronze Star recipient. Or you'd be told how my opponent, Jim Baird, voted to send billions to Ukraine, or that he authored the bill to bring carbon sequestration plants and Joe Biden's Green New Deal to Indiana. But this isn't that kind of ad. I just want to let you know, for the first time in 6 years, you have a choice in the Republican primary. I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I humbly ask for your vote on May 7th. I'm Charles Bookwalter.
Congress Green Beret experience just got even better.
Did you want to join me in our Green Beret experience fundraiser, but just couldn't swing it? Times are tough. I get it. Well, I got some great news for you. A generous group of Bookwalter for Congress supporters are offering matching funds so you can attend the Special Forces experience. You pay half, the other half is matched. And you pay in full, you can bring a buddy.
Until matching funds are exhausted, you can now save big on attending the Green Beret and Special Operators Experience. While spaces last, donate $100, get upgraded to the $200 package. Donate $200 or more, bring a buddy for free.
This is your opportunity to rub shoulders with some of America's most highly trained and lethal warriors while supporting my America First campaign.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret and Special Operators Experience and Fundraiser, March 22nd and 23rd, Fowler, Indiana. Visit bookwalterforcongress.com to order your tickets before these matching funds are gone.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Why would Jim Baird vote against Joe Biden's Green New Deal, then author legislation that puts Green New Deal carbon sequestration plants in our own backyards? Learn more at biggovernmentbaird.com. This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter.
You can tell a lot by a person by what they do when they're under pressure, the decisions they make when no one's watching. And I think it's interesting that courage, Charles, is it's something that you don't always see until you need to see it. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. We were in St. Louis over the weekend, and we were there for the St. Patty's Day Parade. By the way, if you've never been there, fantastic time. Go have yourself some fun next year. It's a blast. It's better than Chicago, in my opinion. But there was a young lady that we ran into, and we ended up running around with her all day long, and she was dressed up, cutest little thing. She was dressed up in a leprechaun outfit, greatest personality in the world, and we never talked politics, not one time. Never came up. But in the process of the day, we had gone to a bar. There's a lot of people outside, and everyone was carrying flags of one sort or another. They had their Irish clan name, you know, the McDonoughs or whatever. And some of them also had American flags with them. And one of the couples that had an American flag had it all wrapped up around the pole. And in the process of partying and stuff, the flag fell over on the ground. Now, I didn't see it. My wife didn't see it. But this young lady saw it. And she made a beeline. She moved my wife out of the way. She's 23. She's in college. She's probably, 2021. She made a beeline and picked up that flag. Didn't ask anybody, didn't ask for permission, just did it, and then informed them. And then gladly, the people that had dropped the flag, they were, oh my God, I'm so sorry. My point is there is hope out there. Our show tonight has been about doom and gloom, but there is hope. There is a generation of people that are like us, that have the same values and the same ideology as us. This is Harrison Butker. He is a player for the Kansas City Chiefs, and a woke journalist tried to get him corralled in about gun violence. Hey, shouldn't we get rid of the gun kind of thing? And this was his response. I think it's refreshing.
I do want to ask, there is a debate in this country over the best way to curb gun violence. After being so close to it, any thoughts?
Yeah, I had to do a lot of thinking about what took place at the parade. I know gun violence was a big discussion, but at the end of the day, this is degenerate violence, and it should not be occurring. I think we need strong fathers in the home. I think we need men that are leading, that are setting good examples, that are teaching the young men in our society that violence is not the way to handle our disputes. It's very unfortunate what happened. Unfortunately, many, many children were injured. Beautiful young lady was killed over someone getting offended and turning to violence to handle that dispute. It's so sad. I don't think guns are the issue. I think we need fathers in the home that are being great examples for our youth.
I couldn't have said any better. How about you, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, it just wraps up the theme of what we've been talking about this time, being prepared, a Christian education, being a leader, a good, strong leader, being humble, all these things. We talk about courage. That young lady that was with you the other day, she probably had some very good training in her life by a good father or mother or family to have that confidence to do that. It's the same thing. I was in combat myself, and one of the reasons I joined is because back in those days when I was young, I wanted to lead men in battle, and I wanted to test my mettle. I wanted to see what it would be like to be in that kind of situation and how I would handle it. And I remember the first time I got in a firefight, I was cool, calm, and collected. It didn't really bother me. There were bullets flying, RPGs are going off, and I just, okay, where do I need to go? And why? Why did I was able to do that? Upon reflection, I know why. Because I was very well trained.
Right.
Because I took the time. I was prepared. The Green Berets trained me in the fundamentals. I didn't lose my mind. I was calm under pressure. I was really looking back. I was very proud. I couldn't believe that I handled the first time in combat, firing weapons and getting shot at.
Well, we've had the conversation before. I've never been tested. I don't know. Right. I would like to think that I have the capability.
That scenario, yeah.
Right. I would like to think that I have the capability. But until you're tested, you don't know. And this nation is on the border of being, we're on the verge of being tested, all of us.
Yeah, and to wrap it up, that's why that guy is probably a strong Christian, This is a conflict that I've had in some of my adult life is being a scrapper, being a fighter, being the person that when I was younger, my friends would come to and say, "Hey, in high school, that guy's wanting to fight me. Will you help me?" And I'd walk over and I'd be like, "Okay, dude, you're not going to do this to my friend. I'm going to fight for him." And I would fight. That was the mentality. That was the person that I was. That's not the person I am anymore. So it's a conflict of God made me a way to be a provider and a protector for my family. But sometimes it gets. But I also know through the sacrificial lamb, through the grace of Jesus, I look at life a little bit differently now. I look, what the fruit do I give off? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, those things that are so important. That's who we need. Men that are slow to anger, men that practice peaceful parenting. I've talked about this before my town hall. I've never spanked my daughters. I see that as an act. That's me losing control. That's me not being able to handle my emotions or the situation. This is what we need. It was all a life of preparation, getting to me this point to be a peaceful, patient, flexible, and loving father. But at the same time, I know deep inside me that God has made me in a way that I will be the first person to punch a bully in the face.
Right, me too. I don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it. We've talked about it in private before, is that my brother was a little guy. He passed away several years ago. But he was always picked on. He had big, thick glasses, and he was little. So the bullies always picked on him. But they didn't know sometimes that he had a bigger brother. We moved so much, we'd be the new kids in school, and they would know that Todd Kramer was the same, as the brother of Tim Kramer. And I was always bigger. As a kid, I was always bigger than everybody else. At about 14, my growth stunted and I stopped growing. All my uncles and my cousins. Well, I'm the shortest. My brother and I are the shortest ones. My uncles and my cousins are all 6'4" or taller.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're the runts of the litter. But that didn't stop the fight in the dog, right? You hear it all the time. It's not the size of the dog. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Mm-hmm. And when I would see my brother get picked on, my wife being picked on in Sam's Club years ago. And I won't go into the story, but my voice could be heard through that entire Sam's Club because they picked on the person that I loved most in the world, besides myself.
Yeah, and that's our role. That's our role. That's
right.
What he was saying, as being a strong influence. Why I encourage young people to provide and protect. I encourage my daughters, like, this is who you're looking for. A strong leader, a good provider, someone that's slow to anger, that we should be looking at in our political leadership, someone that's honest and genuine, and lives a life this way. We have got to get new leadership.
Absolutely.
If you are tired of the way things are happening, if you're upset with the way that the managerial class is mismanaging everything in our life and leading us down a road that is anti-God, that is anti-capitalism, that's anti-Constitution, then we have got to do what Jim Baird said in 2016 and vote those old guys out. We have got to do what he said that we were supposed to do.
And by the way, when we say old guys, I'm an old guy, so we're not talking about age here. We're talking about people who have served way too long and done way too less. In closing here, Charles.
That's the complaint that I have. There's a lot of things that I disagree with Jim Baird's voting record. That him running for a fourth term, when he said that he was only going to run for a third term, that was a mistake.
Right.
That was a mistake. He should not have run for a fourth. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm running for a number of reasons, but that's one of the main reasons is I actually didn't think that he would run for a fourth term.
Well, we know why he is. With that being said, Charles, based on all the bad news, all the doom and gloom that we showed tonight, how much hope do you have for this nation and for what's going to happen next?
Oh, yeah. That's why it's hard to almost have a doom and gloom show. I went all over the statistics about Homeschooling's up 51%. People are waking up. I heard just 2 days ago from a political consultant in Washington, D.C., that they have never seen so many people run for political office in their professional political consultancy lifetime. And they've been doing it for a while. So there is so much to be hopeful for, aside from the fact that if you are a believer in Christ, if you are a God-fearing person, you should always have hope that that we are in a spiritual battle. That what happens here on earth is not as important as what's happening in the spiritual world around us. You've got to always be hopeful. But we're seeing the signs around us as people wake up, as the government takes more, as the government oppresses us more, as the government increases its size and scope and its tyrannical reign, and more people push back. They can never suppress this in the human being. We've been taught that this is not the way that we're supposed to live, and we know it. There's always going to be the resistance, or
those that say no. I'm not doing what the bully tells me to do. I'm not doing it. You can put my nose in the dirt. You can punch me in the back of the head. I don't care. I'm going to be who I am. I refuse to take a knee because you told me to take a knee. Let's get to a couple questions here before we leave. We got about 5 more minutes here left, Charles. From Patricia Cole on Facebook, what do you think about Jamie Ritenour for Indiana governor?
I think Jamie Ritenour is an incredible candidate for Indiana governor. I think, again, like most political, it's so risky for political candidates to do, but we're breaking all the molds. I think Curtis Hill and Jamie Ritenour are the two best candidates for Indiana governor. I've talked about, I haven't heard as much of Jamie Ritenour as I have as Curtis Hill. I've been to so many of his events and I've heard him. And I think both of them philosophically align with liberty and with what we're trying to get back to, peace and freedom in our lifetime. And I think she embodies that, and she would be a great governor of Indiana. The problem that we have is those are the two best candidates and they're both grassroots candidates.
Right.
And they're going to cancel each other out.
Going up head to head against a billionaire.
Yes, a couple very wealthy, well-known candidates. But it ought to tell you, in that statement that I just said, ought to tell you what I feel about all the other candidates.
Right. Exactly. One last question here from Cynthia Groves Bookwalter. Any relation?
I know.
How do you explain the 70-30 split in the Indiana legislature? Do you know what she means by that?
Yeah, I think she's referring to the supermajority that the Republicans have, 70-30. How can I explain it? Inside that 70% is a large majority of Democrats. That's what we were talking about earlier. Democrats in Indiana cannot get elected. And so they move to the Republican Party and they pull the Republican Party to the left. That's why we have an IEDC that takes taxpayer dollars and buys up tons of land. That's why we have an Indiana legislator, Indiana General Assembly that is a supermajority Republican and not conservative whatsoever. So it's not 70-30, I would argue. It is, I don't even know if it's 60-40, but I know conservatives in Indiana are seriously underrepresented as the Democrats and leftist moderate Republicans have taken over the Republican Party, and they're being led by Eric Holcomb.
100% agree. Charles, in closing here, how can people get yard signs? How can people get to talk to you personally? And what can people do to join the Bookwalter for Congress campaign?
Yeah, the first thing you can do is go to our website, bookwalterforcongress.com. There's a link down there, info@bookwalterforcongress.com. You can email that. You can email me, Charles, at bookwalterforcongress.com, or Mike at bookwalterforcongress.com. You email any three of those links, and we'll get back to you with any questions. I try to answer most questions that I get, or comments on Facebook. Most of you know that. I'll comment and answer direct messages. But if you'd like a yard sign, we have a lot. We have a lot, but we've given away. We probably have about 50% of our 5,000 yard signs left. So they are going very quickly. And if you want one, you should definitely let someone know forthwith so that you can get one. If you'd like to help the campaign, just sign up for our newsletter or email us directly, and I'll put you in touch with Mike. And then we'll pass you along to our county coordinators. We have in every single county, folks, we have an incredible team of volunteers. And if you're listening, and I know many of the volunteers are listening, I am just humbled. I can't believe, and I'm humbled and so grateful for all these volunteers that get out and do all this door knocking and all that work right alongside the rest of us. And they're doing it because they believe in the cause and they know that we're true, and we're going to do what we say we're going to do. So reach out to the campaign. You can follow me at tcbookwalter.com. And again, if you can't volunteer and you can't help, and you're too busy with work, you can help us with Treasure. Every campaign needs money. That's why we're offering this fundraiser. This fundraiser costs us money, but it's an opportunity for us to also give back to those. It's a value for value concept.
Right.
You give us some of your hard-earned money, and we're going to give you some of this training that we know and an experience that's incredible. And you'll be able to meet people like, hey, you know what? I would like to learn a little bit more about this. Well, that's great. You're going to be at a location, Briggs Core Dynamic, where they give classes all the time. So you'll be hooked up with the group. These are these little cells that we need to build. This is the community that we need to build. So at the least, you should join us. Send us an email. You should join us to connect with this group of like-minded people so that you can be in contact with people when the time comes and when it's going to be absolutely necessary
Right.
to get together, or if you need to help. We are all just regular people that want to take our country back. We are trying to save America, and we come from all walks of life that have been seriously impacted by government overreach, and we're in this together. And you may not agree with everything I say, and I know you're not, and you're going to think that guy is wrong about that. You might be right, but I'm willing to listen, first of all, and I'm willing to fight for these common goals that we have, which are constitutional in nature. It is taking our country back from this managerial class that is completely mismanaging things and stopping this cycle of disenfranchisement that continues to happen and continues to keep the same person in office cycle after cycle after these yes men that cannot say no to any type of leadership, that there's not a war that they won't fund, there's not a government program they're not in support of, there's not an omnibus bill they won't sign, there's not a government agency that they're not willing to grow, there's not a budget they're not willing to increase. That's what they do. And if you want fundamental change, again, you may not agree with everything I say or some of my philosophy, my ideas, but we're willing to fight back against what we know is the overall problem. And that is a federal government that has completely stepped outside of our bounds and that we have lost control of.
Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up here real quickly. I'm going to pimp for myself here before we close out. And I've got a personal question for you as a voter for Charles Bookwalter. We'll get to that in a moment. April 17th. The Boone County Republican Women's Club is meeting. They're having a candidate forum. It's for those that are running for the first time, or not for the first time, but they're running against an incumbent. So everybody who's running against an incumbent will have the opportunity to speak. I don't know the specifics of it, of what time. I assume it'll be 6:30, 7 o'clock, something like that. But that's on April 17th, and you can meet the candidates of Boone County. The question I have for you, Charles, is there's a new spending bill, and we'll close out on this. There's a new spending bill in front of Congress. What's your position on this spending bill, and what should Congress do?
Look, I haven't seen it, but I can tell you, you can't vote for it. I did see Eli Crane talked about it, and I can't remember the details about it, but I wish I could remember. I saw what he posted. I wish I could see. There's let me just look this up real quick.
Well, while you're doing that, I will tell you, while you're looking that up, I will tell you that one of the things that we're seeing on social media right now, especially on X, formerly Twitter, is a huge push. It's called, the hashtag is shut it down. The American people are done. They're done with the government spending. We talked about it last week. They shut down the engine that makes money. They shut down businesses. They shut down private enterprise. If they can shut down private enterprise, we can shut down the government. We will not stop. If the engine is still moving that produces the cash flow for the government, nothing stops. But if we stop government, we might start getting our rights back. And to your point, you said it earlier tonight, if we shut down the government, if the government shuts down, and if it takes some time, the American people might actually realize just how much they don't need the federal government. You agree?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That spending bill, I just found that tweet. Eli Crane said, dropped in the middle of the night, 1,000 pages long, $1.2 trillion. I don't need to even read it. Includes funding for abortion travel, World Health Organization, Ukraine, genital mutilations, mass parole of criminal aliens, and DEI initiatives. And we'll end up, so I can tell you, no, this is what we have to do. We have to be prepared to have fundamental change. And that means not voting for these. It means potentially having a government shutdown. And I'll leave you with this. You know, let's give them the Black Swan event. You want a Black Swan event, something that hasn't happened before? We actually take our federal government back. We shut it down. You don't pass these bills. You don't pass an omnibus bill, and we actually shut government down. We take it back, and we stop this insanity that's going on in Washington, D.C.
Charles, I think that's the place to end it. Next week, we'll be back again at 7 p.m. For those of you who haven't signed up and still want to do it, you can get signed up for the Green Beret experience, and you can do that at bookwalterforcongress.com. If you want to learn more about Charles, you can do that also at bookwalterforcongress.com. Charles, anything in closing?
No, I've already
said it all.
Bookwalterforcongress.com. Thank you all very much. Thanks for your supporters, and thanks everyone for tuning in tonight on our town hall. We'll see you next Thursday night on our weekly digital town hall.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret experience just got even better.
Did you want to join me in our Green Beret experience fundraiser, but just couldn't swing it? Times are tough. I get it. Well, I got some great news for you. A generous group of Bookwalter for Congress supporters are offering matching funds so you can attend the Special Forces experience. You pay half, the other half is matched. And you pay in full, you can bring a buddy.
Until matching funds are exhausted, you can now save big on attending the Green Beret and Special Operators experience. While spaces last, donate $100, get upgraded to the $200 package. Donate $200 or more, bring a buddy for free.
This is your opportunity to rub shoulders with some of America's most highly trained and lethal warriors while supporting my America First campaign.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret and Special Operators Experience and Fundraiser, March 22nd and 23rd, Fowler, Indiana. Visit bookwalterforcongress.com to order your tickets before these matching funds are gone.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message. My name is Charles Bookwalter, and I'm running for U.S. Congress. In the average campaign commercial, the announcer, backed by patriotic music, would inform you I'm a former Green Beret and Bronze Star recipient. Or you'd be told how my opponent, Jim Baird, voted to send billions to Ukraine, or that he authored the bill to bring carbon sequestration plants and Joe Biden's Green New Deal to Indiana. But this isn't that kind of ad. I just want to let you know, for the first time in 6 years, you have a choice in the Republican primary. I'm Charles
Why
Bookwalter,
is Jim Baird
and
working so hard to suck CO2 out of the air, turn it into a sludge, and then force it deep into the Hoosier heartland? More importantly, what happens if this sludge gets into our water supply?